Good day, everyone. It's Kevin with VintiqueSound.com, and today we're taking a look at the new Cubase Pro 10. And there's over 25 new features and updates that I want to cover in this video, so let's get to it. So number one on the list is the full support for high resolution displays. In order to use it, you have to enable it. So you have to go to Edit, Preferences, General, and right here, Enable High DPI. And you have to restart the program in order for that to take effect. So this means that the mixer window, all the GUIs for the plugins and all that stuff, even the little icons and all this stuff is all high resolution. Number two is what's called Snapshots, and this is a brilliant implementation. So they've taken the mixer window history and they've expanded on that, where you can actually take a snapshot of all your mixer settings, including third-party plugins, and save it as an instance, and you can recall those snapshots, and you can even add in special notes in that snapshot. So for instance, in this mix, I can save it. This is a snapshot 1. In this notes, I'll say regular mix. And another snapshot, what I want to do is lower the bass and get rid of the sidechain compression to the bass. Now I can save that in its own snapshot and describe this. And now I can switch between the two. The thing to keep in mind is that recalling mix console snapshots are actually going to delete any insert automation. So just keep that in mind. The cool thing about this is that you no longer have to save separate projects in order to have different settings saved. Sometimes you will save different versions of your project to save different mixes, but then in the process you might have made changes to the audio, to editing, to various other things, but you would have to open each individual mix project and make those changes. So yeah, this just makes your life so much easier, and you can quickly hop between different mixes. Number three is the channel latency display. So you can activate it from the window up here. And in this little section here, it's going to tell you the exact latency for each individual channel. And you can hover and click this little drop-down menu, which tells you for each and every insert. This will now allow me to go and investigate and make smart choices with my plugins. Number four is a revised channel strip design, which makes use of the entire vertical space. So this allows for more information in the window. For instance, when you're playing your project, you can see the EQ information. You can see the magneto working. There's more visual feedback. There's more space. And it makes more sense to now actually use the channel strip. I could be wrong about this, but it seems easier to also rearrange the different units in the channel strip. Number five is access to VST FX and Instruments in the Media tab. So I'm going to drop in a RC24 Native Instruments plugin to the bass here. And you can see it inserted the plugin into the next available insert slot. The cool thing about this feature too is that you can take a snapshot, a picture of the plugin with the little camera button here. And now it adds a picture into the media slot. Another cool thing is that you can drop in a plugin into an empty space and it's going to create a new track. And in this instance, it's creating a new effects track. Number six is the new Distroyer, which is a distortion plugin with several good little features. I've dropped it into my kick track and we're going to tweak these settings. So right now I'm filtering out the low end so it's not distorting the low. I have 50% mix. We can get crazy if we want. We can blend it back down. We can get a little bit more of a hard style kick if we wanted. Or we can blend it to taste. Number 7 is the new sidechain input selection, where instead of having to activate the sidechain, then go to the channel that you're sending audio from, you can actually just access it through this little drop-down menu. And you can quickly switch between pre and post fader, and then you can go to that channel by clicking the little E button, and it goes to the channel where the sidechain selection is. So I think it's a much better implementation of sidechaining. The one thing I wish that they would implement is the ability to just copy paste a plugin with sidechain, and it retains the sidechain input selection. Number 8 is the ability to convert from mono to stereo tracks, as well as the reverse. When you have the track selected, in this case this is a stereo track, and you go to Project, Convert Tracks, and in this case we're going from multi-channel to mono. You can select to keep tracks, mute them, delete them, create a new project, and then when it creates the new track, it's actually also retaining the track settings that you had in the original one. So you can see all my EQ is the same, all my sends are the same, the targets, so the outputs are the same. And then for the flip, the reverse, is you can select, let's say, these two mono tracks, go to Project, Convert Tracks, mono to stereo, or mono to multi, and I can select stereo or surround sound, and then click OK. It creates an entire new track in stereo. So number 9 is the ability to edit multiple audio tracks or events in the lower zone at the same time. And this is perfect for time aligning different audio pieces. So let's say I have a bass guitar and a kick drum, and I want to time align the bass to that kick drum. So I would select the two audio events, and I would bring one to the forefront, probably the bass guitar, and then I can edit however I want. Let's say it was free warping. I can edit the bass guitar to match the timing of the kick drum. And then you also have the ability to just flick on and off the visibility of multiple events or the single highlighted event. So that will be a huge time saver for me. I do this type of work a lot. But there's one feature I wish they would have included in this, is the ability to edit MIDI and audio events at the same time in the same way. So I wish you could see the MIDI represented here, as well as the audio that you're working with. So if they implement that one little extra spice, I would love Steinberg forever. Number 10 is the new VariAudio 3. This has tons of workflow enhancements. If I was to show all smart controls, I now have quick access to many different VariAudio features. One of them is formant to the individual event. Volume, if I hover to the right over here. I can tilt the pitch amount, and I can set the anchor for that tilt. I could do that for either side. You also have the ability to warp the audio. You can hold down Shift, and that will actually edit or slice out the audio as well. And now whenever you use the straighten curve function, you can see how it's flattened out the variation in pitch. Sometimes that can give you very robotic results that can be or cannot be desirable.
Gotta get in the groove.
But if I was to set the range of the transition point, I can leave a section between the transition of those pitches to not be straightened out, and it'll sound maybe a little less robotic and more natural.
Gotta get in the groove.
There's also very easy access to formant at the bottom left and volume at the bottom right. And I can straighten the pitch by the center top right here, by the individual events, or highlight them all. And I can also quantize the pitch at the bottom center. A couple more really cool features is you can use a reference track. So right now I'm referencing the chord track in this project, and whenever I change the note value of an individual segment, it's going to tell me that it's no longer in the key that the project is in. So you can see here it's flashing red. Or you can reference to a MIDI track if you're trying to time align or pitch align to that MIDI track. You can also split a segment by holding down Alt on a PC and clicking. And it's also really easy to just glue pieces back together. So all of those features makes VariAudio just so much more powerful. Number 11 is the audio alignment tool, which is something that I had requested in a video. So here I have two vocals, and traditionally if I was to time align these, I'd have to edit each individual event, or I'd have to use something like the lower zone and do some free warping or something. Now what you can do is go into Audio, open Audio Alignment Panel, and from here you would select your reference track and then your target track. So let's listen before.
Gotta get in the groove. Gotta get in the groove.
And with perfect time align.
Gotta get in the groove.
It's like scarily perfect. So that was a feature that was already in Nuendo, and now they've brought it into Cubase. Number 12 is the new version of Groove Agent, which is SE5. So just a quick overview. I may do a more in-depth video later, but this has 32 velocity layers and 32 available outputs as opposed to 16, so they've doubled it. There's also the browser window that's integrated into the right-hand part of Groove Agent. Let's say you wanted to swap out a single sample of your kick. You can easily drop and drag things within the browser window here. There's also a new acoustic drum kit, and you also have the ability to export mixer settings within Groove Agent to the mixer window in Cubase. Number 13, it is 5 gigabytes worth of new media, such as the analog techno blockbuster, quite a large number of audio samples, MIDI loops, audio loops, etc., etc. They've also added some new impulse responses for Reverence, which is their convolution reverb. And for those of you that don't know, convolution reverb is essentially a way of recording what a room sounds like. So they take an impulse response in a very mechanical and strategic way, and it's exported into a file, which then you can import into the convolution reverb, and it mimics the space in which that was recorded in. So for example, they've taken impulse responses from a New York church, and they've also done it from a studio in New York, and it mimics being in those different spaces. Number 14 is a new add track window. You can flip between the different track types. You can select the audio inputs, outputs, name it, the track count, the amount that you want, mono, stereo, all in this nice new window. Number 15 is the new Colorize window, which is a little bit more visually appealing and easier access to the colors. Number 16 is the ability to save favorites for the direct offline processing. So for instance, let's say I have a favorite vocal processing chain. I may want to have a compressor. I would hit apply. Then let's say I want to add a vocal plate reverb. I can rearrange the order of these. I can highlight the chain of effects, drag them into the favorites, and I can call this vocal with verb. I can now go into any vocal and apply the exact same processing. Number 17 is the ability to select a small range or a portion of the audio file that you're importing into the project through MediaBay. To have access to this feature, you cannot have the Align Beats to Project enabled, and you use the Control and Alt on a PC. To select the range, you can drag it into the project, and there it is. And it's preserving the entire sample from which you're importing from, so you don't have to commit to the small selected range that you initially started with. Number 18 is a new context menu, which you can activate by clicking Control on a PC and right-click on the mouse. And before, this context menu was so huge and it had all these different processes and whatnot, it was just really cumbersome. Now it's actually also context sensitive. So if you're highlighting on a MIDI track, it has functions and things that have to do with MIDI tracks and MIDI events, and for an audio likewise. Number 19 is the implementation of MPE Expression input devices. So you can add a new expression input device, and these can either be motion sensitive, pressure sensitive. These types of controllers are basically taking advantage of the note expression in VST3 and whatnot, where you can have pressure sensitivity or motion sensitivity controlling note expression. And some of those controllers are fantastic for improvisation and recording this note expression. I've seen videos now, someone showed me in a comment of a guy basically conducting with a motion sensor that takes the X, Y, and Z axis into account, and he's automating things and creating just a very expressive thing while playing the piano. And those expression input devices, man, when you see them in action, there's something else. They just open so many doors creatively. Number 20 is a feature that was already found in Nuendo, and it's the ability to have the video player, whenever you're working with video, to essentially represent wherever it is you are editing in the timeline. Let's say I wanted to have a sound effect right when the little record thing appears, which is roughly here. I would take an audio event and I can move it around and I can time align it visually very quickly. And there, now it's basically time aligned to the impact of the record. And you also have visual feedback when editing the video file itself. So without this feature, and to turn it on as you go into transport, use video follows edit mode. Without this feature, you're only visually representing what's in the video wherever this transport is. But when you edit the video in any way, it's not visually representing what's going on there. And then when you move the audio, it's not visually representing what's going on at the point where the audio is edited. Number 21 is a feature which I also requested in a video, and it's the new implementation of AAF standard format. And this is a much newer, improved, better version of OMF, and they're both like an industry standard format for projects. And you now have the ability to import and export AAF projects. I've always had issues with importing, exporting OMF, issues with audio files not being correctly time aligned in the project. So I'm glad to see this format. Number 22 is the implementation of the VR or virtual reality production suite. So you can now do virtual reality style of processing. Most people are now familiar with head tracking technology, which depending on where you tilt your head up and down, left and right. So let's say I had a game where you're walking around and you turn towards a fire pit and you hear the crackling of the fire. And when you turn away, it kind of just pans away and the reverb gets louder or whatever. You can now process that kind of head tracking data and implement that type of processing in the project. Number 23, Steinberg has improved the Hitpoint detection algorithm, and they're saying that it's more accurate, and they say that it's also more musical sounding. Number 24 is a better resampling algorithm that's more accurate and creates less artifacts. So let's say you're working in a 44.1 kilohertz project and you import audio that is 48 kilohertz. The algorithm that converts and resamples that audio down to 44.1, it's now cleaner and it's not going to create as many unwanted artifacts. And number 25, 32-bit integer and 64-bit audio file support. So Steinberg is saying that there in the future, it's likely that interfaces support 32-bit integer, which is different from float. So they're kind of preparing for that. And also 64-bit float audio is pretty crazy if you ask me, probably unnecessary, but that's also available. And what I'm talking about here is the audio bit depth and not the project bit rate or whatnot. They've implemented 64-bit float project processing that was in an earlier version. This new implementation is for the audio files themselves. And there's probably more features that I didn't cover in this video, such as additions to the chord pad and various things. But I'm going to cut it short there at 25. So I know I'm going to enjoy this version of Cubase immensely. They've added several of the features that I've requested in a video prior. They've also added more extra features that I wasn't expecting. And a lot of these are actually very, very good workflow related updates and new features that I'm probably just not going to want to live without now. I know I was excited. I woke up this morning and saw an email that Cubase 10 was out, and I had to wait all day at work until I came back home just so that I could go and buy the update and then try it out and then make this video here. I'm going to leave you with a quick plug to go and check out my website here at vintiquesound.com, where I offer mixing, mastering, editing services. I also have a blog, and I'll continue expanding into different areas such as creating Hallian 6 VST instruments, Contact sample-based instruments, vintage synth and vintage drum machine samples and loops, etc., etc. And right now I'm having a 50% off all audio engineering services from November 15th till the end of the year, December 31st. You'll get 50% off just by using this code below. Winter is coming, a capital letter at the first letter of each word. Whenever you add anything to the cart, you could add higher quantity, smaller quantity, and you add the promo code in the section here, and then you hit apply, and it adds the 50% off. Right now it's not working because the promo doesn't start until about 40 minutes from now.